Hello, sixth graders. So today we are working in lesson 2.1. We are on page 101 and we are working with percents and fractions. So please make sure you have your textbook open to page 101. Our learning target today is that we will be able to find a percent of a quantity as a rate per 100. Solve problems involving finding the whole, given a part, and the percent. So let's take a look at the example given with sports. For each sport, shade a 10 by 10 grid that represents the number of students out of 100 who chose the sport. So this is our 10 by 10 grid, 10 by 10. So we have 3 out of 20 students chose basketball. So 3 out of 20. And then we want to make that proportional to 100 because we have 100 squares altogether. And we want to shade that in to represent how many out of 100. So we're asking ourselves this, how many times does 20 go into 100? Well, that would go in 5 times. And remember, with fractions, whatever you do to the numerator, you have to do to the denominator, and the other way around as well. Whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. So we would take the numerator and multiply it also by 5. 3 times 5 is 15. So 3 out of 20 is proportional to 15 out of 100. So out of these 100 squares, we would need to shade 15. So I'll shade 10 and 5. So I'll shade 15 out of 100 of the squares, okay? So I'm just going to shade with my pencil. You can, if you have a colored pencil, you can do that as well. Okay, so that's 15. There we go, that was easier to go vertically. Okay, so 15 out of 100. Okay, next, football. 3 out of 25 students played football. So 3 out of 25 would be proportional to how many out of 100? So I look at 25. How many times would 25 go into 100? 4. So what would I need to do to my numerator? I would also need to multiply it by 4. And 3 times 4 would be 12. So 12 out of 100 students would play. If there are 3 out of 25, then it would be 12 out of 100. So I'm going to go ahead and shade in 12 out of 100 because that's how many students would play football. Okay, 12 out of 100. All right, gymnastics. Not as popular of a sport. Okay, difficult sport. All right, 1 out of every 20 students is in gymnastics. So how many would that be out of 100? Well, how many times does 20 go into 100? 5. So we multiply that by 5. Then we would take our 1 and multiply it by 5. 1 times 5 would give us 5. So 5 out of 100 students would be enrolled in gymnastics. So 5 out of 100, so we shade that in. And then swimming, they gave us, it's already out of 100, so we don't have to scale it up or scale it down. 9 out of 100 students are involved in swimming, so 9 out of 100. Okay, all right, next. So number 2 asks us this, what function or what fraction with a denominator of 100 represents the number of students who chose each sport? Okay, so basketball was, we can see it right here, 15 out of 100, 15 out of 100. Football was 12 out of 100, 12 out of 100. Gymnastics, 1 out of 20 is proportional to 5 out of 100, so 5 out of 100. And swimming, they told us right at the beginning, was 9 out of 100. So 9 out of 100 students. So we want to be accustomed to and comfortable with scaling up to 100, because when we say percent, that means per 100. So if you can write down the word percent and look at the root word of percent, it's cent, C-E-N-T. That's the root word. And per means like out of. Okay, so you know, if I said there is 1 lifesaver per student or 2 lifesavers per student, that's going to tell you how many per student. But when we say percent, that's a little bit more specific. So cent, we know that that means 100. So if you think about cent, how many cents are in a dollar? 100. How many centimeters are in a meter? 100. How many years are in a century? 100. So cent means 100, or centi you can mean 100. Okay, so when we say percent, that literally means per 100. How many per 100? So this means per 100. Okay, percent means per 100. All right, let's turn the page to 102. Okay, percents is fractions. So a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on this. Okay, so for example, and the percent sign. Let's talk about the percent sign, because it means per 100. So if you can draw a percent sign, it's like making a number. You start off with like making a number 7, but without the top part. Okay, so it's just a diagonal, and it actually does matter. It goes from top right to bottom left. And if you ever forget that, you can look at your keyboard. It shares a button with the number 5 on your keyboard. Okay, so when you start off making the percent sign, it goes top right to bottom left. So it's like making a number 7, but without the top line. Okay, and then you put a circle in the top right of it, or a dot, excuse me, in the top left, and a dot in the bottom right. Okay, so that's a percent sign, and it means per 100. Okay, and just it looks similar to the division sign as well. So example, 45% means 45 out of 100, or if we write it as a fraction, 45 hundredths. And then if we look at our 100 square here, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 5. Okay, so 45 out of 100. And if you look at a 10 frame, that would be 4.5 out of your 10 frame. Okay, would take you to that almost halfway point. Okay, 50% is half, we know that. So 45% is just 5% less than that, half. Okay, next. To write a fraction, to write a percent as a fraction, first write the percent as a rate per 100, then simplify if you can. Okay, so let's look at example 1. And example 1 tells us to write 50% as a fraction in simplest form. So 50% means 50 per 100, because remember, percent means per 100. So we say 50 over 100. And then we know that 50 and 100 are both divisible by 50. 50 divided by 50 is 1. 100 divided by 50 is 2. So this would simplify to 1/2. Okay, so we divided both of those by 50. We factored out the greatest common factor. Number 2. In a recent survey, 55% of cell phone owners said they text message. What fraction of cell phone owners is this? So first, let's start off with the 55%. 55% is equivalent to 55 out of 100. And I look at 55 and 100, those are both divisible by 5. Okay, so I'm going to take each of those numbers and divide them by 5. 55 divided by 5 is 11. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So I get 11/20. And they can't be simplified further. Okay, that's the as simplified as the fraction gets. Okay, let's do the same thing with got it A, B, and C. All right, got it A. the directions are write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. So let's start with A. 75% is the same thing as 75 per 100. So percent means per 100. So 75 and 100. I can think of a number that they are both divisible by. What's the greatest common factor of 75 and 100? 25, okay? And if you didn't see the 25 and you just divided by 5, you would notice again, they're still both divisible by 5, and then you would simplify again. So when we look at 75 and 100, the greatest common factor is 25. So I'll divide by 25 in the numerator, and in the denominator, okay, 75 over 100 simplifies to 3/4. Okay, and then I want you to think about another way that we read 3/4. We also might say 3/4. And if you think of our monetary system, our money, okay, where do we recognize that number? Quarter? A quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. Okay, so if I had 3/4 of a dollar would be 75 hundredths or 75 cents. So that is why we call a quarter. All right, and then we're just going to pause for a moment here. Think about another area in math where we hear the word quart. Okay, and that's in measuring capacity. So if you have ever gone to the store, you can buy a gallon of milk, you can buy a half gallon of milk, or if you want a little bit less, you can buy a quart of milk. How many times do you think a quart will go into a gallon? It will go in 4 times. So a quart is a quarter of a gallon, 1/4 of a gallon. There are 4 quarts in a gallon. Okay, and that makes sense because we know the prefix quart. Okay, when you look at our number, our coordinate plane, right? When we learn about graphing points, which we've done some this year, okay, there are 4 quadrants, right? And this divides the axes divided into quartiles. Okay, so into quadrants here. All right, let's go on. Just wanted to tie that to our other vocabulary. Okay, again, our directions right as a fraction in the simplest form. So 90% means 90 per 100. So 90 and 100 are both divisible by 10. 90 divided by 10 will give us 9. 100 divided by 10 will give us 10. So that simplifies to 9/10. Okay, 38%. As a fraction, we write that as 38 per 100. Okay, and we look at 38 and 100, they're both even numbers, and we know that even numbers are divisible by 2. So we divide by 2, and we get 19/50ths, and that's the greatest common factor, so we cannot simplify that further, 19/50ths. Okay, nice job with that. Let's take a look at the top of page 103. Okay, number 3. The table shows the percent of each movie type rented during a month. What fraction of the rentals were action movies? Okay, so when we look at action movies, we see there were 35%. Okay, so what fraction is that? So do these add up to 100? Let's see. 40 plus 30 is 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. So yes, it does add up to 100%. Sometimes in math, when you're looking at information on a chart or in the news or in the newspaper, the numbers don't always add up to 100%. Sometimes you'll see they'll add up to 99% or they'll add up to 101% because sometimes that'll happen just due to rounding. So these all do add up to 100%, so that's good to know. So they asked what fraction of the rentals were action movies. So we see 35%. So we're going to go ahead and write that as 35 over 100 because 35% means 35 per 100. And then we look at these are both divisible by 5. 35 divided by 5 and 100 divided by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 7/20 of the movies were action movies. 7/20 of the movies were action movies. Okay, let's do got it D. Write the fraction of rentals that were horror movies. So horror movies were accounted for 5% of the rentals. So 5% will be written as 5 over 100. And 5 and 100 are both divisible by 5. They have a GCF of 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 1/20 of the movies were horror movies. Okay, so that was the first part of our lesson. We looked at writing percents as fractions. And now we're just going to go the other way around. Okay, take a fraction and write it as a percent. So we need to scale these into 100s. Okay. So let's look at number 4. Write the fraction 6/8 as a percent. So we'll work over here, 6/8. I can see in this really nice diagram that they gave us, this area model that they gave us, 6/8, I can see it's equal to fourths. It would be equal to 1, 2, 3 out of 4, 3/4. So I can see that visually, which is nice. So sometimes drawing an area model will help. So 6/8. Well, 6 does not go, I'm going to leave a blank space here for a reason, because I know 8 does not go evenly into 100. So I want to see if I can scale this down, which I can. I'm noticing 6/8 can be simplified. 6 and 8 are both even numbers, and even numbers are divisible by 2. Okay, so again, we're doing these problems without a calculator, okay? So 3/4. How many times does 4 go into 100? 25. So what do I need to do to my numerator? Also multiply by 25. 3 times 25 is 75. And now that we have it out of 100, 75 hundredths is the same as 75%. Okay, so that answer is 75%. All right. Let's look at got it E. And again, that area model will help you to see. Okay, in the area model, I can see fourths when I look at the columns. So I have 1/4 here, 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns are shaded out of the 4 columns that are there. So I can see that 3/4. Okay, so that's one way, and you can see that as the same as 75%. We know 3/4 is 75%. So we have 9/12. And we're being asked to write that as a percent, okay? So first of all, 12 does not go evenly into 100. I can't do 12 times 10 and get 100. I can't do 12 times 9 and get 100. I can't do 12 times 8 to get 100. It does not go in evenly. So, but I am noticing, and we're gonna give you problems that are, you can scale them down. For this homework, you won't need a calculator, okay? And you shouldn't use a calculator. So we're giving you numbers that are friendly numbers to work with, because we want to see that relationship to hundredths. Okay, so 9 and 12, these numbers are both divisible by 3. They have a GCF of 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So I see the 3/4 there. I also see it visually in the area model. Okay, so now 4 does go into 100 evenly. It goes in 25 times. And so then whatever I did to my denominator, 4 times 25 to get 100, I have to do to my numerator to get the new numerator. 3 times 25 would give me 75. So now I have 75 hundredths. Okay, so that is 75%, 75 per 100. So this is 75%. Okay, and remember the percent sign goes from the top right to the bottom left. It's like a number 7 without the top, okay? And the percent sign goes after the number. Okay, let's look at the next page, 104. We're going to look at a sports example, page 104. Mitch made 12 out of 40 shots during the championship game. What percent of his shots did Mitch make? So 12 out of 40. Okay, so we want to simplify that. 12 and 40 are both divisible by 4. They have a GCF of 4. So that gives us 3/10. Okay, and 10 can go into 100. 10 going to 100, excuse me. We do times 10. So what do we do to our 3? We do times 10. 3 times 10 gives us 30. So 30%, he made 30% of the shots. So Mitch made 30% of his shots. Okay, got it, F. Alana spelled 19 out of 25 words correctly. So 19 out of 25 words correctly. What percent did she spell correctly? So remember, percent means per 100. So we want to make our denominator 100. Do 25 times what to get to 100? 4. So what do we need to do to our 19? We need to multiply by 4, and that's going to give us 76. So she made 76%. Okay, and that is chapter 2, lesson 2, fractions and percents.